Hello everyone, welcome back to the Overseers. I'm Proelios, joined as usual by my co-host Nightwing, and we are back to share our thoughts on each of the teams that are going to be playing in the fifth season of the Overwatch League, or should we call it the Overwatch 2 League? We don't really know yet, but yeah, we are moving on to Overwatch 2 in professional play officially for the first time, and a lot of things are going to change. So we are definitely going to have to put a disclaimer here that our analyses partially will be wrong because we really don't know at this point what Overwatch 2 is going to be like. But we'll do our best to review all the rosters and give you guys an educated estimate of what things might turn out to be like. So yeah, Nightwing, what's up, and are you ready to get back into it after a bit of a sabbatical?
Yeah, we've had a bit of a break, and I think so has the league itself. I mean, it's been a pretty long off season, and obviously we're going to be moving into a new game. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how teams actually change their dynamic, because obviously some teams benefited a lot from these individual DPS performances, and that will probably carry into Overwatch 2, and then some tank synergies and some other stuff is something that you're going to miss in Overwatch 2. So it's going to be interesting to see how teams adapt to that.
Yep, definitely. And to kick things off, we thought we'd start off with a roster that is pretty much well set up to enter the fifth season of the league, which is the Atlanta Reign. Now, the Reign announced their official roster quite a few weeks back. I think it was probably a couple of months ago. Um, they seem to be pretty set on um, going in with a set seven players at this point, and they might pick up more throughout the season. But just like last year, we are going to go over the tanks first, then the DPS, the supports, and then the coaching staff. So, shall we start things off with the tanks, Nightwing?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So, just like last year, the Atlanta Reign have got Gator and Hawk on tank, and I don't think there's much to say about these players because they're both really stable presences on the team. They are consistent. We know their strengths. We know their weaknesses. Um, and I think they were pretty safe bets for the Rain going into the next season, considering that head coach Sephy has got a fair bit of experience with working with them at this point, and they've also got experience with a few of their current teammates. So, any specific thoughts you want to share on them?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, Gator and Hawk have sort of silenced doubters. I mean, they were a tank line in the finals of the Overwatch League last season, and they're both incredibly solid. And you have seen that the small blind spots they might have in their hero pool, especially for Gator, are usually easily made up because they do understand how to play the game on a very fundamental level, and uh, that's when you saw that Gator was able to execute the duplicates comp with him playing Winston uh, just as well as any other team, despite people not really considering them, Winston to be one of his core heroes. So I think this tank line is especially well placed to sort of perform well in Overwatch 2. The only concern, obviously, is uh, how much does their sort of shot calling structure change now that one of the tanks has to be missing? That's something that the Atlanta Reign will have to work on. But thankfully, a lot of their players are English speaking, and I think the language barrier can be sort of just ignored in this case, since it's only Venom that might have some trouble speaking English. And I think in that sense, the tanks should be able to sort of swap in and out depending on whether you want to play heroes like Diva, where Hawk would come in, or Urisa, where Gator would come in. So in that sense, I think they should work quite well for Overwatch 2.
Yeah, I agree, and I think especially when you're going into a completely different game, it's better to hedge your bets on known talent rather than going for unproven players who may or may not excel at Overwatch 2. It's different when you're going for star players from contenders. But other than that, like if you've got players that you know work well with your structure, might as well keep them, give them a shot, and see if you want to pick up any better players throughout the season. Um, but yeah, I think Gator and Hawk pretty. I think I would say average compared to the other tanks we have in the league this year. But I think average is good enough to start things off because you never know who might turn out to be a really good solo tank because the tank game is going to change completely since you're not relying on since you don't have two tanks in the game. So it's the role itself is going to be fundamentally changed, and we'll see how that works out for the rain as well. So I think let's move on to the damage lineup, which is Kai, Venom, and wait, is that it? Do they just have Kai and Venom? Oh
Kai,
no,
Venom,
my
and
bad.
Nero.
Nero, Kai, Venom, and Nero.
Yes.
Right. So I think let's start things off with Kai because this guy was with the Rain last year as well, and overall he is a pretty good hitscan DPS player, super consistent, and he is known to pop off every now and then. So I think it's a good move by the Rain to have retained him this season, especially since they're going for a more Western focused roster. And what do you think about this Nightwing?
I think Kai is a great hit scan. I think uh, the the kind of just solid performances that you would see from him on snipers as well as the Cassidy and a couple of other heroes that he would sprinkle in here and there would make him a very good contender to stay on the Atlanta Rain. And I think with Pelican gone, the DPS line should still be able to pull through, uh, considering that Kai is probably one of their bedrocks for the team. I think, yeah, he's just incredibly solid, and I think he'll continue to do really well, especially because the kind of mechanical skill uh, that this guy has should transfer well into another game as well. And it's not so much position reliant as much as it is mechanical skill and aim reliant for Kai. So he should do just fine in Overwatch 2, I think.
Yep, that's a fair assessment. And do you also want to share your thoughts on Nero?
Oh, Nero, I thought did an incredible job on the Shock last year in season 4. I think people gave him a lot of flack at times, but he, in my opinion, was probably uh, sort of the hard carry for the team last year at like many intervals. The rest of the DPS line and sometimes the support line, even the tank line, would be very split apart and would not really know what to do. But Nero's Echo and even his Tracer, which turned out to be quite exceptional. Um, I mean, not at the very top, but he would contend with some of the best Tracers, and would maybe sometimes get a win here and there from them. So I think Nero's also positioned really well to be a very flexible team player, and he just has a lot of game knowledge for all of the heroes. So I think he'll do pretty well in this upcoming season as well. I think his duo with Kai covers basically every hero, and they can always sub in Venom for the Tracer. So I think in that sense, the DPS line for the Atlanta Rain is like really well rounded.
Mm-hmm. I think with Nero coming in, it's hard not to compare him to Pelican, who was the former flex DPS player for the Rain. And honestly, like when Pelican got traded to the Houston Outlaws, I was like Atlanta must be bonkers to agree to that because even if they were going for a Western core, you're losing arguably the best May and the best Echo in the league. So I don't know, man. I think they must have been offered a lot of money for that trade. And if I were part of the Reigns management, I would probably just save this money for like a massive mid-season pickup in season 5 based on who's popping off early off in the season. So I think once they get a bit of a read on what pieces they're lacking for Overwatch 2, they will spend that money and get a player or two um, to help fill their gaps. But anyway, Nero. I'm not as high on him as you, Nightwing, but I do think he's a decent flex DPS player. He's I would say he's a downgrade compared to Pelican for sure. But he does have a wide hero pool, which will benefit the team in Overwatch too. And one thing that I really liked about his gameplay, which I don't know if many people noticed, was his top-ian play. Like his top was really solid. Um, when you just think of top, you just think of, oh, you place your turret in a good spot and that's it. But Nero genuinely had really good mechanics and he was shutting down flankers and divers really well. So I think it also fits in with that Reigns, the Atlanta Reigns more anti-dive kind of playstyle, which they mastered in season 4. I don't know if that will be much of a thing going into Overwatch 2, of course, but considering the team dynamic and the direction Sephy is taking the team in, I think Nero will be a solid fit. Um, and yeah, of course, they've got Venom, who's a rookie joining from contenders. You guys may have seen him named Sigma in his Tier 2 games. And for those of you that don't know him, he's a hit scan player who recently played for Odyssey. And I think we just know him well for his Tracer, right, Nightwing?
Yeah, that's really what I've seen from him mostly.
Yeah, I mean, I think he does seem to be inexperienced, so I think even considering that he's a really good tracer, he will probably be league average. Um, but that said, he is a good substitute for Edison, who was kind of the tracer specialist for this team. And again, with Edison's contract expired, um, I don't think the Rain wanted to keep him because any with Kai and Pelican, you don't need to sub in Edison at any point. With both Kai and Pelican able to play tracer to a decent level, so he's with the Dallas Fuel, but still a good pickup to fill in the tracer gap. And even though Venom is the only Korean player on the roster, he has played with Western players before, so I don't think he'll face a lot of communication issues. So that also solves the kind of language barrier issue that we were talking about earlier. So, any further points to add about the DPS Nightwing?
I think for Venom, especially, the interesting thing about him is he's very similar to the tracer one tricks that you used to have in the beginning of the league and contenders season 0, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
etc., where you would just pick up a player that would only play tracer. And obviously, as the years have gone on, these tracer one tricks have gone and picked up many more heroes uh, to become players at the forefront of the league. So Venom here is sort of relatively new talent, uh, but he does genuinely have a very good tracer. From what I've seen, his playstyle is quite different from many other tracers that he plays against, where he will force 1v1s, but he will also know how to punish uh, uh, poor positioning and would even know how to create poor positioning for the enemy team. I think he does understand the hero in and out uh, more than some other players that sort of just pick Tracer up despite them being mostly flex players. So I think in that sense, you could potentially see Venom sort of out dueling some other tracers. I do worry that he's not going to have too much playtime because you can easily just put in Nero, who also does play quite a good tracer, and just get away with that because Nero is significantly more flexible. So depending on how often you might need to change your comp, I think Venom might struggle to actually find playtime. That said, I do think it's a good pickup still.
Yep, all very good points. And yeah, I think we can move on to the support line then, which is the dynamic duo of Ojee and UltraViolet. Now, this is not Ojee, the tank player. This is Ojee, the American main support player, who played with American Tornado. Now, if for anyone that follows any contenders, you will have heard of Ojee and UltraViolet because they were both with American Tornado for at least the past year or so. They're both fairly flexible and have been playing together for a while. So I have pretty high hopes for them. But what about you, Nightwing?
Yeah, I think people were looking at Ojee as being probably the next sort of moth for in terms of like main supports from Western regions. And I think that may just be true because he has been probably the only exceptional main support player in NA or EU contenders, really. And I think that shows by the sort of finalist team from last year picking him up. I think he's a very hotly anticipated player, and I'm really interested to see how he fares in a new game. UltraViolet as well. He's quite skilled. I think Iris did do quite well last year for the Atlanta Reign on the Batiste, but his flexibility didn't really sort of happen because they just sort of kept playing the BAP, and you could see that Iris was not as comfortable on other heroes, even though he played a decent Moira in the Dupligotes comps, and his Ana was alright as well. But I think Ultraviolet is a little more well-rounded. But I am interested to see if he is at that same elite tier as Iris when he's playing on the Overwatch League stage, because it's good to be all-rounded, but you do have to actually show an elite performance on one hero because you can only play one hero at a time, right? So that's something I'm curious about. But that said, I do have very high hopes from this support line. I think there's some of the best rookies that have been signed this year.
Yeah, for sure. Because Ultraviolet, I think he really has a good chance to shine on the Zenyatta, because he's really known for his deadly Zenyatta gameplay from any contenders. Because like if you watched him play, it was very tough to pick corners that he was watching, because he would just fire a volley at the right time and chop your head off. So his high mechanical skill will come in handy in a game like Overwatch 2 a lot. And once he's alongside with Ojee once again, um, I mean, the duo dominated NA contenders for the better part of a year. So I think they're going to do really well, especially Ojee, because his shot calling experience from American Tornado will definitely come in handy in uh, tier 1 as well, because once again he has a mostly Western roster to play with, so communication isn't going to be that much of an issue. So I think that I honestly think the support line is the best part about the Atlanta Reign this year. I don't know if you agree with me there, Nightwing.
I think, like I said, I think they're good rookie signings, probably one of the best rookie signings this year. But I'm not sure I can definitively say that they're the best part of the team, because I do honestly think that the DPS line and the tank line are also quite good. So I think they're still unproven in the on the OWL stage. So I'm not sure I would say that, but I would certainly hope so.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think let's quickly just talk about the coaching staff as well. We've got Sephy leading the crew once again. And I remember saying last year that Sephy really just has one chance, I feel, to prove his worth. Otherwise, the Atlanta Reign will definitely get a new head coach. But Sephy honestly just struck gold with this roster, right? Because he stepped up in a big way and just adopted a completely different strategy by making his team perfect anti-dive comps, knowing that they are not as flexible as some of the other teams. So he just played to their strengths, which is really smart. And I don't think, honestly, that the same approach will work in Overwatch 2 with a higher number of heroes. And honestly, this might be hopium that there are honestly a, a fairly higher number of heroes in Overwatch 2. But Sephy showed promise, and I'm interested to see how he plans for Season 5. What are your thoughts on him, Nightwing?
I mean, it's just the results speaking for themselves, I think. They made the finals, and Sephy was behind them, and it seemed like Sephy was letting players do sort of player led VOD reviews, and letting the players sort of improve each other instead of just being dictatorial and forcing certain play styles onto them. And that's sort of what led to, I think, the players playing many heroes that they were comfortable with, and playing the comps that they were comfortable with, and I think that clearly worked for them. But alongside that, he also successfully worked to make comps like the duplicates comp work. And in that sense, I think he did a good job. I'm not sure how much of an impact he personally had, but I think the coaching staff as a whole did do a good job, because the Atlanta Rain didn't really seem to have sort of a weakness in their armor or their arsenal. They were able to play what they wanted to. It was never sort of a comp diff sort of situation where the Atlanta Rain would lose because their comp was worse or because they could not play particular heroes. So I think in that sense, the Atlanta Rain did do quite well in the coaching section.
Yep. And I don't think there's much about to say. There's much to say about, sorry, about the assistant coach Legit RC, because honestly, I don't think either of us knows anything about him. He's just been with the Rain since 2020 and with Atlanta Academy before that. So I guess it's good that he's still here because he's worked with them for a while and things worked out last year. But yeah, I think we've gone through pretty much all the critical elements of the Atlanta Rain. And any final thoughts before we wind up this review, Nightwing?
I'm just curious to see what sort of comps the Atlanta Rain play uh, now that they're not stuck to playing Orisa Sigma, because Orisa Sigma together doesn't exist anymore. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Overwatch 2 affects the Atlanta Rain, because they are one of the teams that has a very fixed play style at times. So uh, do they sort of just go diva and then start playing like hard dive by putting Hawk in, or do they become really turtly and defensive and play some sort of comp like that with Gator? I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Atlanta Rain express their own flair of the game in Overwatch 2, because I think they're one of the teams that do have a very set play style instead of being extremely flexible, some other teams.
Yep, and the good thing is that they've added a few players to their arsenal now that make them a little bit more flexible, especially with someone like Nero coming in. Um, they've still retained some of the flexibility that they lost when Pelican left the team. And with UltraViolet in, like, I'm sure that he is. UltraViolet and Ojee, both of them are really flexible support players. So I think even that will work to their benefit because I think with Masa we mostly just saw some good Lucio gameplay. His brig had improved over time, and that's about it. And with Iris, we just mainly saw Batiste and a bit of Moira. But other than that, he didn't play Ana Zen, anything like that. So I'm hopeful for them. I think they've got a good roster to start things off with. But naturally, we'll see as we get more information about the league, about Overwatch 2, and so on. So, yep, any final thoughts, Nightwing, or shall we wind this up?
No, I think you pretty much covered everything. I think so. It's going to be interesting to see where the Atlanta Rain plays next year. I think it's a competitive league, but I think Atlanta, based off of the sort of winning formula that they created last year, hopefully they're able to integrate these new pieces and make it work again. That's all, really.
Yep. Okay, then I think that does it for Atlanta Rain roster review for the 2022 season. If you guys liked our analyses, then please like the video and do all the YouTube stuff that helps people find our content. And we will see you in the next review, which will be about the Los Angeles Gladiators. We'll see you there soon. Bye bye.